Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. This week, we're going to cover some of Kentucky's breaking political news. We've got a candidate for the special election for District 93. We've got a terrible but not surprising SCOTUS decision that makes life harder for Gen Z. We've got a really special campaign corner with the new Kentucky Democratic Auxiliary and its leader, Anna Whites. Then we're very excited to interview Kentucky Commissioner of Education, Dr. Jason Glass. We will then close out with a critical call to action. But first, are you ready to help turn Kentucky purple? We absolutely know that our state is deeply red. We've got a GOP supermajority in Frankfort committed to moving us backwards on LGBTQ plus rights, on BIPOC visibility, on women's rights. They want to weaken the ability of unions to collectively organize for better pay and better working conditions. They want to keep the minimum wage abysmally low. And we have critically important elections coming to voters across the state in November. And if you want a commonwealth that works for all of us, join Progress Kentucky, support our campaign to turn our commonwealth purple. You can make a donation right now at our Secure Act Blue website. We are planning our election campaign launch right now to push back against the hateful liar, Dan Cameron. We're going to need resources to print flyers, to pay for texting platforms, to promote our efforts on social media and digital ads. So if you like what we do and you want to take an active role, a really easy way to do that is just make a contribution today, small or big, somewhere in between. It all counts and all helps us do our work. So hope you can do that today. So let's now check in with our co-host. Let us know who you are, where you are, and what does your protest sign say today? And you watching on the internet, feel free to play along. Put what your sign says in the chat while we're sharing ours. My name's Aaron. I'm coming to you from Childsburg, a beige siding barrage in Lexington. And my protest sign says, "A book has never opened fire on a class of second graders. Protect kids now." So let's check in with our co-hosts. Kimberly, are you there?
Yes, I am here. How are you doing tonight?
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us. It's been a minute. Glad to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My protest sign says, and of course, I'm here in Louisville, Kentucky, live in Jefferson County. And my protest sign tonight is basically this: Republicans cannot ever be in office again. Hashtag get them out.
Across the board, no more of them anywhere. I like your vision. Let's speak it into existence. Speak it and organize it into existence. All right. Willie, how about you?
I like that she's just cutting to the chase. I'm Willie Carver, coming to you from Montgomery County, Kentucky, in a early 20th century Cape Cod. My sign says, "My company is worth nothing." And if you know that moment on The Office, it's when Michael has a fake office, he has a company and it is going bankrupt. And he basically tells them, "I know it's going bankrupt and you're the big guys with money, but I'm going to keep coming back because this is all I know how to do." That's how I feel right now. So it doesn't really matter how much power the other side has. It doesn't really matter what they think. I'm going to keep showing up and doing this over and over and over because there is no world in which I don't let LGBTQ, Black, brown people and women win. So they're going to see me as a thorn in their side until I win, when I will.
I love it. Yeah. I think it's like your approach is going to be necessary to get to the point where Kimberly's approach is real. I think there's some steps along the way, but like we have got such an exciting moment. I called this episode Happy Dependence Day because we all just celebrated Independence Day yesterday. We terrorized every manner of animal out there. My poor dog is cowering for 3 nights straight of so many fireworks. And that idea of independence, I love it because we're free of the British, right? And who wants to be a part of the the drama over there around their castle. But we are truly, we're not independent individuals. We're all in this together, right? That whole idea that it takes a village to to raise up the next generation of that village. I love that vision, and I'm really excited about the people that we are talking to on this episode, because they're all folks who speak to that view and vision of community and how we all need to work together to bring out the best in all of us. So I get it. We want to be independent of the British, but we do need to realize that we are dependent on one another if we're going to make this world a better place, and Kentucky a better commonwealth for sure. So,
can I say something about that?
Of course you can, Kimberly.
I know that our producer Nate, he was like muting us, and I was like, how am I going to be able to interrupt Aaron? Like, how am I going to be able to do that? So thank you, Nate, for allowing me to just butt on in. But you know what? As far as Independence Day is concerned, and leaving England of the British and the taxation and all of these things, and we are celebrating that, I am sorry to say I don't celebrate that, because in 1776, my ancestors were still slaves here in America. There was no independence whatsoever for us. The only independence that we had was in 1865, going by the 13th Amendment. So June the 19th is my Independence Day. And do I have anything against other people that celebrate on the 4th? No, I do not. Will I maybe go to a fireworks show? Yes, I may. But just in my heart of hearts, that holiday is not for me or people like me.
Yeah, there's a lot of like anti July 4th sentiment out there, right? I was, at least in the circles I run in, right? There's a lot of Facebook posts like asking people if they celebrated it. And a lot of people are like, no, I can't, because our United States is just so fundamentally flawed. I do kind of come down more on the Barack Obama approach of celebrating the promise of America, even if we still haven't fulfilled it. The fact that the Declaration of Independence has some wonderful language, but we still have not actually met that visionary language, I think, fully and completely. And Kimberly, your points are, I think, incredibly right on. But we still have a system that we can work to improve, and that I think is worth certainly doing, taking advantage of those opportunities. But we're not there yet. Yeah. And anyone thinks it's like some great thing we need to make America great again. Like, when again was it great? I'm sorry. I think there's moments of greatness for sure, but lots of work to do.
And Kimberly, I'm with you in that. For me, Juneteenth is the closest we have to an actual Independence Day. And I would even say Juneteenth is the Independence Day for people like me. And by me, I mean a human being living in America, because we are, to tie all this back to interdependence, we are dependent on each other. And the moment we think that we are free when someone else isn't, that's when we're living in a dream world. Like, we are not free unless all of us are free. So I think I might celebrate July 4th, the day that it is sort of a collective understanding in America that we haven't gotten it right yet, and we're actively trying to get it right. Until that time, I won't see it as Independence Day. I'll see it as I don't know, Broken Promise Day, Big Dreams Day. But
it's a day for me that, I know I'm going to get barbecue. That's, I know I can go and get about 4 or 5 plates of barbecue. So, I'm okay.
That's worth waiting on.
Yeah, for sure. That's celebratory. I would celebrate that. And the day to get some tranquilizers for your pets, just because they're not going to enjoy the day. All right, so we need to get to news of the week. We've got a jam-packed show. I think the first story is coming to us via Willie.
So, speaking of dependent on each other, that also means being dependent on taking care of each other, making sure that all of us are safe, and we don't do that. The Supreme Court just killed Biden's student loan forgiveness plan because, of course, it did. Of course it did. And if you know about the plan, it was pretty straightforward. If you made under $125,000 a year and received a Pell Grant, so there are both of those. So if you're not the richest person in the world, but your parents are, this wouldn't necessarily apply to you. You would get $20,000 forgiven from your loans. If you made under 125,000 but didn't receive a Pell Grant, then it would be 10,000. And every single person I went to high school with received a Pell Grant. So the court's conservative justices argued that Congress has the power to forgive loans, but not the executive branch. And that was their primary argument. So what wasn't said is the real question about why this case existed in the first place. And here's basically what happened. So in the state of Missouri, where this case came from, the Missouri Higher Education Loan Authority, which calls itself MOHALA, which sounds like a demon, argued that it was going to lose revenue if these loans were forgiven, around 40% of its annual revenue, which would, according to them, be a loss for the state, which is why they argue that the state of Missouri was able to bring a case. But Justice Kagan, in her dissent, said that the state of Missouri doesn't have the grounds to bring this case because MOHALA, which isn't a demon, is a state-created corporation participating in the student loan market and a legally and financially independent public corporation. So in other words, you've got liberal justices who are claiming that the GOP-led state of Missouri has no right to bring this case and that MOHALA is not an arm of the government and is in fact an independent organization. So who was right? Well, here are some basic facts about MOHALA, which is not a demon, works in tandem with the state. And so this is coming from the Kentucky City Star. MOHALA was created by the Missouri legislature in 1981, but it operates as an independent entity. Missouri law says that the legislature cannot be held liable for decisions made by the student loan provider, but they do use money from this provider to do things like make scholarships. So if you really think about what's happening there, the state does not have liability, but the state is still suing, claiming that it does. So it appears to me to be an overreach of power for SCOTUS to touch this case. And if Congress didn't like the executive decision, they could have, as Joe Biden pointed out, passed a law of their own, but they didn't. Instead, they, maybe illegally, maybe not, used an independent money-making organization for which the state of Missouri is not liable as the suing vehicle while claiming liability. And Justice Kagan had this to say. She said, the court's overreach in this case is deciding it all. And under Article 3 of the Constitution, a plaintiff must have standing to challenge a government action, and that requires personal stake, which we call injury. The court forgets its role. The court acts as though it is an arbiter of political and policy disputes rather than of cases and controversies. And this court decided that 40 million Americans would not receive this basic benefit. So is it an organization that's independent or isn't it? My answer is who cares? The real question is, why did Congress rely on SCOTUS instead of actually passing a bill? Because the GOP has zero interest in having elected officials do anything actually unpopular. Most Americans actually want student debt relief. 2/3 say that student debt's a serious problem. 6 in 10 says that it's preventing people from buying homes or having kids. 63% see it as a way to ease financial burdens, especially on people living in poverty. Every survey that exists shows that Americans were in favor of this plan. But we know that SCOTUS is now an arm of the Republican Party. Think about every recent ruling that has really rocked the sort of foundation of the U.S. Most Americans are actually in favor of affirmative action. Only 38% want to abolish it. 84% of Americans oppose doctors refusing care to LGBTQ people. 71% are opposed to LGBTQ people being denied service at all. And a large majority of Americans believe in the right to abortion in all or most cases. 61%. Only 39% actually believe in bans. So what we're seeing is SCOTUS, which doesn't have to worry about re-election, doing the dirty work, and senators and Congress people wringing their hands and doing absolutely nothing at all. And that is the safest way to stay in power, since no one can blame them. And what's the effect, especially on Kentucky? The Kentucky Center for Economic Policy says that 209,000 Kentucky residents would have had their loans entirely forgiven under this plan. And another 406,000 would have had a portion of their debt forgiven. That is, there are 3.4 million adults in Kentucky. That means 1 in 5 of our neighbors would have benefited greatly from this and would have been able to live better lives. Here's an example. I owe more now in student debt than the day I graduated in 2006 because of how high those interest rates are. And I even went back to school to get accreditation so that I could teach college classes in multiple subjects to my students. I did not get a pay raise for this, but I did it because my community needed me to do it. My question is, why isn't our community helping those people who are making decisions the way that it should be, the way those people were helping their communities? So that's the news. 0.6 million Kentuckians worse off than they were before.
That is such a just a huge slap in the face, right? And Biden campaigned on it, the Democrats worked hard for it, and SCOTUS, unelected billionaire, paid for SCOTUS said, no, sorry, on a case that probably shouldn't have had standing to be decided by SCOTUS to begin with, right? So, SCOTUS is losing their legitimacy very quickly with rulings such as this and decisions such as that, in terms of how they're taking up cases, their shadow docket. The whole thing is like, there's a lot of just deep skepticism about SCOTUS and how it's operating right now. And with each and every week, it seems like there's a new revelation about how just compromised these individuals are. I also, like, on the standing question, the idea of the web designer in Colorado, like, how does this person have standing to bring this case? Like, I'm not an attorney, but it just didn't make sense to me. They didn't have any harm that I could see, but
not a real client either.
Yeah. But they also had a right-wing group, kind of promoting their efforts for sure. I am married to an attorney, but that does not give me any legal training. But all right. So speaking of, though, we have another story we got to do, and then we're going to get to our actual attorney. So very excited to hear from Anna Weitz later. But let's get.
I didn't get to say anything.
I know. I know. I thought you were muted. I thought you were muted. I've been promised that you were muted. Go, Kimberly.
The Supreme Court is doing the same thing you're doing right now. They're not letting all of us be heard.
That's true.
Because this affirmative action thing that just happened, I cannot explain to you, and we're going to get to our guest and everything, but this is really important to have this other point of view. That was a dagger in my heart, because now there are so many people. They did an article about a young lady here in Louisville that's trying to get into Harvard and how this is going to hamper her to get into Harvard. And she's worked very, very hard to get there and to maybe actually have that place in their university. Affirmative action may help her somewhat. So now we're doing that. So now the next thing we're doing is jobs. Then the next thing we're doing is no LGBTQ plus rights. Then the next thing we're doing is women can't work certain jobs. And then the next thing that we're going to be doing is that women get paid less again. And we still are right now, but even less. And then the next thing that's going to happen is that we're going to go back to where the husband, the brother, the uncle, the son has to tell the woman what to do. You all didn't know years and years ago, it was only the husband or the son or the brother or the uncle that could tell a woman what fragrance to wear.
I don't want that responsibility.
I mean,
Well,
my
this
mom
is
was
what
born
would
in
be
like women
happening.
couldn't get credit cards with in their own name. Like, there's definitely this radical SCOTUS and the folks who own them, like literally own them, are dragging us backwards.
Yeah,
and it's head snapping.
What are we going to do about it?
My concern, Kimberly, is you see all these conservative groups now that are saying, don't you try to circumvent this law or we will come after you. What they're going to create are the exact same conditions that we see in Kentucky right now, where people are terrified to say the words LGBTQ because it's so easy for someone to sue us. So what has this just created? A system in which if you have a Black student, someone's going to say, let me see the scores and justify the student. That's scary for me.
They already do that, Willie.
And now they have legal backing.
College. You don't get into a certain college by being Black or Latino or whatever, and your scores are not up to par. Your scores have to be up to par with everyone else or better. Okay.
Oh
I
yeah.
know this for a fact, like being accepted into the doctoral program. They don't just say, oh, okay, you get to come in. There's a process to that. And sometimes, if we didn't have affirmative action, I'm telling you, it would just be University of Louisville is one of the most segregated schools, predominantly white. Okay. And this is just what's happening to us. And then you look at the way that the world is going, and I'm gonna shut up now, but let's look at Paris. That's all I'm gonna say on it. Let's look at Paris right now. Paris, France.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of, I think, justifiable outrage happening right there, right now. And, they're having their George Floyd moment, I feel like, in a way that, we clearly had here a few summers ago. And, it's influencing the conversation, and I think it'll influence the politics. And, that's clearly something that needs to be wrestled with in many nations, not just the US. So, I will say this, and I don't want to cut this short, except for we have got a jam-packed show, and we've got to cover a couple more stories. Or one more story before we get to our first guest. So I want to just flag that we, in fact, have a candidate now for the 93rd House District. So if, we all know our dear friend and leader tragically lost Lamine Swann. So folks were vying to secure the nomination for that district. The governor announced the special election will be held the same day in November as the governor's race, and the other constitutional offices will be held. And we had trans activist Emma Curtis seeking the nomination, Adriel Camuel, an administrative assistant at Fayette County Public Schools, as well as Dan Kemp and Chris Couch. So it was an interesting mix of new candidates, Emma and Adriel, as well as some retreads. Dan Kemp ran for the 6th Congressional District, losing the nomination to Josh Hicks in 2020. And Chris Couch, who I think ran for the Democratic nomination against Lindsey Burke, although he dropped out when there was a domestic violence charge brought against him, which I think was later dropped or downgraded or something. But he had been a candidate before. Emma mounted a very significant campaign, fundraising, publicly launching her bid with Facebook and other social media elements. She had lined up the support of Lamine's mom and the campaign team of Lamine Swann. Adriel worked her connections. She'd been a very active presence on a number of campaigns in the area, knocked on hundreds and hundreds of doors for folks like Sherilyn Stevenson. She was even one of the folks who could have voted for the candidate. She recused herself, of course, but ultimately that kind of handful of voters selected Adriel as the candidate. That means she'll be running against Kyle Whalen, the Republican who ran for the seat in 2022. He is a construction entrepreneur, according to the Lexington Herald leader. I don't know what a construction entrepreneur is, but he did run against Lamine Swann, lost by about 8 percentage points, this is a district that went to Biden by, I believe, 17 points, according to the Herald leader. So that's the case. Adriel, and Emma both showed up at the Lexington July 4th parade and walked with the Fayette County Democrats. Emma issued a wonderful statement, getting folks to come together. I think there was a lot of, she did a lot of organizing. And so that, you get people organized and get them out on the streets or get them at an event, people get disappointed if they didn't get what they wanted. But, I think when you've got 11 voters, you got to figure out what's the right approach for your campaign. I think that Adriel picked a smart move, and she got the nod, and we'll have her on this show and hear about her campaign and what she'll be doing. But yeah, I just want to make sure everyone knew that we've got somebody running now for the seat held by Lamine. As much as we're going to miss him, in the legislature, we're going to need to replace him for sure. So, anyone want to weigh in on the 93rd or that kind of inside race?
Only that it was two wonderful candidates, multiple wonderful candidates, but of the two I was hoping for, one of them won, and I'm glad that it was one of the two.
Yeah. No, it was like great that there are 4 people like legitimately seeking the nomination, because sometimes, and we'll hear about this, I think next, that doesn't always happen. So, all right, Kimberly, anything?
No, I don't have anything to add to that. Great story, Aaron.
Thank you. All right, so let's do our campaign corner check-in right now. As I mentioned before, we have got Anna White's joining us. Anna, in addition to being, she is the Democratic kind of constituency, I think, lawyer in the state. She does about everything. We've had her on to talk about redistricting because she's, kind of an anti-gerrymandering attorney. She has been our kind of, not on the show, but our pro bono attorney on a number of things as we've figured out how to, remain legally viable as an entity, as a C4 entity in the state. And now she has a new project, which is really exciting, which is the Kentucky Democratic Auxiliary. So please, Anna, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. Tell us a bit about the Kentucky Democratic Auxiliary.
Thank you so much for having me. This project came about because every year after the election, I gather candidates, PAC folks, campaign folks, KDP folks at my office and ply them with liquor or whatever they want, and get them to tell us what went wrong, what went right, and what we should do next in politics. And it's very no holds barred, very honest. And every year people would leave with their notes. This is what we should do. And I didn't see anything happening. And I kept saying every year, somebody should do something. And then finally this year or last fall, I said, someone should do something. And I guess it's me. And so reached out to a good friend of mine, Bruce Maples, to be our chair, because he's a very organized, focused person and very passionate about growing rural Democrats. And we got some funding from wonderful donors, because we hold trainings around the state, mostly in our rural areas, to train county parties on politics, on bench building and fundraising in particular. And we had Chris Kirkwood, brilliant map maker, show us where in the rural parts of the state Democrats could win under the new maps, under the demographics. These are areas that we should be building Democrats. And I truly just started cold calling county party chairs, and in counties where there were no county parties, just calling important Democrats and saying, I'm holding a free training. We line up 6 to 8 speakers, and they are all folks who have been candidates, are actively working on campaigns, run PACs, have some very important experience to share. We want these to be engaged people who know how Kentucky politics works today. And with our funding, we're able to pay them as a small stipend and also pay them for their travel, mileage, or gas. Because I believe that as Democrats, we need to reward and thank the people who put forth time to grow the Democratic Party. We can't just say, oh, appreciate your time, move along. It's very important to say, particularly to young people who are taking time off school or work and maybe can't even afford to do it, we love what you do. We are grateful. Here's, $50. Here's $100. At least you can buy lunch. And that way we're building a base and we're building a respect for their expertise. And so we started out, our very first one was in my home region of the state up near Ashland, Kentucky. And we had such an enthusiastic audience. We went through our 4 hours of topics. And beforehand, I was thinking, this will, no one's going to pay attention for 4 hours. They were engaged. They were taking notes. They were excited. And halfway through, we do the bench building, the fundraising part first, and then we hold networking halfway through. And seeing people just talk and network and share ideas and say, we should, from all these different counties, we had 6 different counties represented, we should work together. People left feeling like they could do something, they are doing something, and there is a way forward. So the first section is fundraising. And we have people talk about the real basics. How do you find a donor list? How do you look around your town or your county and figure out who's going to give you money? And how do you host a fundraiser? How many people should you invite? What should the food be? We have the speakers talk about real life scenarios. And I have the best part. I get to go first and tell people horror stories. This is what you should not do, because nothing gets people engaged in talking like a terrible story that happened to someone else. And we even have somebody go through and give an actual call time speech. This is how you call time. And one of my favorite call time educators is Mike Van Winkle, who ran against Andy Barr, ran for state rep. But before he did all that, Mr. Van Winkle sold cars. And boy, howdy, the man can give a call time speech. And seeing how that experience, selling cars, selling vacuums, translates into selling a political party, helps us feel less hopeless, because people sell cars and vacuums every day. So why can't we just as easily, just as doggedly, just as devotedly sell our party? Then we take the networking break, and then we move on to bench building, because as we look around the state, last election, more than half the races didn't even have a Democratic candidate. And that's a shame, because in the state, at least half of us, and hopefully considerably more, are Democrats, registered Democrats. And so we want the county parties to look around and build their bench, call in and invite in people who will be future candidates for whatever that is. We talk about the hard stuff. How do you recruit LGBTQ+? How do you recruit diversity? And I bring in people who have that lived experience to tell us why they like their county party or why they don't, and what a group can do to bring them in. Because we want the chairs and the county party folks we train to be able to go home, tell everyone they know, and immediately start building a county party that is much more friendly to diversity, much more friendly to youth. We have young people come in, and I tell the story. In one county, the party wanted to have a fundraiser, and they thought maybe a dance at the country club would be fun. And young people on that group pointed out the country club had been whites only for a very long time and was not very LGBTQ friendly. So already you'd X'd out two large groups of future candidates and voters who wouldn't feel comfortable at that fundraiser. And then the Young Dems suggested maybe we should do a river cleanup. People should clean up at the end. Maybe everyone would get a snack or a donut and a t-shirt that said, I did the Democratic river walk cleanup. People want to feel valued, want to do something that's fun and a bonding activity. And one of those raised just as much money as the other, but one of those raised about 50 times more Democrats than the other. And that is the ultimate goal. Fundraising is very important. All our county parties need funds so that they can hold events, support candidates, train folks, but mostly they need to bench build. We need to walk around, I tell my folks, in our Democratic shirts. We need to be proud about who we are, and everyone who meets us in our daily lives needs to know we are a wonderful person and we're also a Democrat. And that's the way to build benches, is to recognize the groups that we are marginalizing or not including and have those hard conversations so that we include them. If we as leaders don't talk about the hard stuff, why don't Black people like to come to my white county party? We have to say those words. We have to ask ourselves those questions, and we have to build an environment that invites people in. And if even things like, are you holding your meetings in an ADA compliant space so that the physically handicapped can come in? Are you holding your meetings where the overhead is buzzing so that persons on the autism spectrum can't be in there? It's upsetting to them. We need to look around ourselves and our space and make it a welcoming, inviting party. And that's how we get money and build benches and eventually win races.
That's awesome. Anna, this sounds like such a just smart and strategic undertaking. How can people get involved? How can people help? You know, obviously you said you've got some funders. That seems wonderful. But, you know, also you are an incredibly busy woman. I don't know how you find the time to do one more thing, even though it is valuable and important. So, you know, what can people do to support what you're up to?
We do have a website. It's KentuckyDemocraticAuxiliary.com. We also have links on Forward Kentucky, Bruce Maple's progressive news magazine site that will link you to the auxiliary. And some of our trainings, the less fun but very important, how not to sexually harass people and how to be culturally competent training, 1 hour given by me, so you know it's fun, is up on YouTube under Kentucky Democratic Auxiliary Training. We also have a half-hour training up on YouTube under the same name, which features General Counsel for Legislative Ethics, Emily Dennis, talking about how county parties and candidates should appropriately work with lobbyists and legislators without getting into ethical trouble. On the website, we certainly will accept donations, whether that be a plate of cookies or more money to fund these trainings. You can also look for the announcements. Your local county party chairs, wherever you are, should be receiving these. We're doing actually Anderson County on July 15th at the Labor Hall. We try and hold them all at Labor Halls because they're comfy and because people know where they are. And that's from 9 to noon on the 15th. We're planning Covington probably early in August or later this month if we're lucky, and looking at Paducah as well. You can also just email me. I'm easily Googleable. I'm on Facebook. My email is my name, Anna Whites, ANNAWHITES @AOL.com. Hit me up with any questions about the auxiliary, how you can attend training, or how you can help.
That's awesome. That's so great. And thanks so much for, seeing the problem and addressing it. We have a number of takes on your quote, other alternative quotes that are along the same lines, but somebody's got to do something. And, we're all somebody, right? You're a little bit more of a somebody than some of us, but, we appreciate your expertise that you bring to the conversation for sure.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We have to move on because we get, again, I've said it before, I'll say it again, we got a jam-packed show. And now we're really, really fortunate to have with us the Kentucky Education Commissioner, Dr. Jason Glass. It's a name that might sound familiar, even if you have no idea who the other cabinet commissioners are. Commissioner Glass has been dragged into the political spotlight over the fight about the treatment of LGBTQ plus students and appropriate subject matter in K through 12 education. The folks in Frankfurt decided he needed to be the center of this conversation, and then folks running for office decided they really wanted to pile on as well. So Jason Glass is a commissioner and chief learner at the Kentucky Department of Education. He's a native of Brandenburg, Kentucky. He's been commissioner of education since September 2020. He previously was a superintendent at Jeffco Public Schools in Colorado, very large county there. Superintendent of Eagle County Schools in Colorado from 2013 to 2017. He received his bachelor's degree in political science in 94. He then earned a master's degree in education in 96, a master's in political science in 2007 from UK, and then got his doctorate from Seton Hall University and a certificate in advanced education leadership from Harvard in 2019. And he's been doing this for a while. He began his teaching career as a high school social studies teacher from 96 to 98 in Hazard, Kentucky. As a graduate student, he was an instructor at UK and Georgetown College. He was actually in 2016 nominated to the National Board for Education Sciences by President Barack Obama. Multiple award-winning leader in education. He and his wife, Sarah, who worked as a teacher for 17 years, have 2 kids and a dog, Sunny. Both children attend Fayette County Public Schools. Welcome, Commissioner Glass. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Willie, and thanks, Kimberly. Great to be on with you all. I've enjoyed the show so far.
Awesome. Thanks for hanging out with us. So did you really ever expect to find yourself in the middle of such a political firestorm, drafted into the 2023 culture war on woke?
I guess in retrospect, I should have seen it coming more than I did. We've been hearing sort of the gaining momentum in politics, particularly in red states, around K-12 education being a centerpiece issue. We saw it with the Don't Say Gay bill that came out of Florida initially, and then some of the other steps that were taken there. Then some states start to replicate that. It really got a full head of steam with the critical race theory bills that were popping up around the country in different versions of that. Of course, we experienced some of that here in Kentucky as well. But then coming to this year, this real explosion of education politics as the centerpiece of the culture war has come to our state. So I'm not entirely surprised. You don't take one of these jobs, being a state chief, not knowing something like this can happen. And if we look at the past two state chiefs with Wayne Lewis and Stephen Pruitt in Kentucky, they sort of endured similar sort of ending that's probably in store for me. So you don't take these kinds of jobs not knowing that it can become political and these sorts of things can happen. But I guess I've been surprised at the reach of this. I came to Kentucky really knowing that we had a supermajority of Republicans, and I expected them to be conservative and to value small government and to really value keeping the government out of people's lives as foundational conservative values. But we're really dealing with something else now, in that they're really, I think, stepping into some totalitarian policies that if you look at some of the worst fascist regimes around the world that have done some of these same things. So I think it's a very alarming time. We need to be very concerned. This is not normal. We shouldn't normalize it, and we shouldn't accept it. So I think overall, I'm not surprised to be where I am right now, living through all of this. But I am surprised at the severity and intensity of it.
Yeah, it's definitely a firestorm, I think is an understatement, really. And I definitely didn't have it on my, dance card that this was going to be the number one issue that the Republicans, decided to put out there in terms of their own, their own choice of candidate for the governor's race. I was very surprised to see like two of the candidates really leaning in and making just you guys the kind of fall guy for the general idea of what's happening in K through 12 education. I think there was nuance, there was some rational views in the spectrum, right? But it's two of the biggest candidates and folks who spent the most money, who put you guys in ads basically, or not really you, but folks they could beat up on as you. So really just pathetic and scary to watch. But it's a really good point about who's done this in the past, and we should watch very carefully where it's going. Kimberly, do you have a question for the commissioner?
I sure do. Dr. Glass, why do you think children, and by extension, meaning in schools, are at the core of so much political division at this point in time? Why is that? Is it because we're up 9% in hate crimes? What's going on?
Well, this certainly ignited in Kentucky when we saw Kelly Craft hire the marketing firm that Governor Youngkin had used in Virginia, and followed a very similar sort of strategy of anti-woke education policies as his path to the governor's office. Soon after that happened, we started getting open records requests in mass from the Kentucky GOP at the Kentucky Department of Education. We given them the information that they asked for. There's really nothing there. They were asking for any emails around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, critical race theory, transgender, LGBTQIA+. And so they sort of were mining us to see if there was some kind of controversy or crisis there, or something that could turn into a scandal. And when there was nothing, they sort of invented one, really. I think the reason this keeps coming up, we've gone from sort of COVID era education politics into critical race theory. Now we're into anti-LGBTQ politics coming into education. The reason that it keeps coming up is that the Republicans have found it to be an effective strategy at mobilizing their base. This is something that gets the very reddest parts of the Republican Party very excited. It turns them out to vote. And until that strategy can be beaten back or disproven in some form, I think we should expect more of it to come, especially as now you've seen national groups like Moms for Liberty get organized, and money and attention, and even from presidential candidates going into that. I don't think that this is going to sunset in red states anytime soon.
Don't they understand that we are too woke for the okie doke?
I don't know how to answer that or what that even means, but I'm going to let Willie take that question.
I was, the scariest part of your sentence to me was the word "until we can prove otherwise." English 101 teaches that in order to have a proof, you have to have two parties looking at the same evidence who agree that the evidence is real, and then you build logically on that evidence, right? But in this case, evidence is immaterial. I mean, there's literally no shared narrative, no shared evidence, no shared science, no shared medical belief. There's no shared really anything, right?
Yeah.
So how do we disprove, right?
Yeah, I mean, having opposing viewpoints and different parties is actually healthy. And any time that we get a one-party state, either on the left or on the right, we typically have seen some really terrible things happen, either from fascist states being created or these sort of leftist dystopian societies that are created. I mean, these are not good things when you have a lack of debate and a free exchange of ideas and a competition for people to decide what's the best path forward. So I think we should be concerned at the super majority that is present in Kentucky. I appreciated what Anna said around we've got to do some things to balance this out, to create some more balance, to make sure that opposing perspective at least gets heard and considered and can create some balance. I think that's a really healthy perspective. But what we are experiencing in sort of this war on truth is something that we have seen before, and it doesn't end well. And I don't say this lightly, but you see it in the rise of fascist regimes throughout history. There's a sort of attack on truth, and the sort of demagogue leader starts to say whatever they want, and the fact that they can lie and it goes unchecked or unchallenged is sort of even more proof to their power. And the fact that they can say things and do things with impunity is a proof of their power. So this is not a new experience we're going through. I do think that we need to be really concerned for not just our state in Kentucky, but the future of our democracy. Again, I don't say this lightly, and I hope that I'm overreacting. But fascist regimes typically take root through democratic processes, and they corrupt institutions, they corrupt election systems to maintain that power going forward. So I think we need to be really concerned, not just for Kentucky, but for the future of our country.
Yeah, that is alarming to hear somebody from your position say that. I don't think it's necessarily off base. I think it's important that we all understand the challenges ahead of us right now. But, we've got one party that does not acknowledge climate change is real, right? The most fundamental thing that we as a society need to be wrestling with, and like 50% of the political powers in the United States of America do not acknowledge it as real, something that they need to deal with whatsoever, right? So if that big one is going unchecked, imagine what else they can do to make life harder. And it is just, the hottest week on record. We're living it right now, and 50% of our political system does not acknowledge there's anything that we need to do or think about in terms of this, right? So yeah, we got a lot of challenges, and the core of the improvement of the United States, right, is that shared public education, the fact that we're helping everyone get the tools they need to be productive members of our society. So yeah, why wouldn't they go after you guys? Oh my gosh, it's key to their ability to steal power away is having a bunch of people who aren't well educated and don't have shared information and shared abilities to decipher that information, right? So I don't know, it's a terrifying time, and that's not really a question. It's more just a soapbox. But hey, that's what happens when you create your own live stream and you stumble into it. Sorry, Commissioner Glass. But other thoughts about this political process. What have you learned through it? I mean, obviously you learned you should update your resume because it seems like they're coming for you, and maybe you might need to go somewhere else to get your next job. But I hope you stay in Kentucky, because I do know that we need more leaders like you in education. But as our host panel shows, sometimes the best folks in education don't always stay in education for all sorts of reasons. But tell us what have you learned from being in the middle of this firestorm, and how should we all be responding because of that?
Yeah, I really learned a lot about trying to accept that I don't control everything that's around me. And that's a healthy lesson for anybody, that we can control our own actions and how we react to things, but you really don't control a lot else. And to start thinking in terms of what lesson is this teaching me, and how can I grow as a human being, as a father, as a husband, as a professional, as a person from this experience. So that's some of the takeaways that I've tried to take from this. But I do want to say that what we are experiencing right now is not normal, and we should not normalize it or accept it. We need to be really concerned about these attacks on marginalized groups, because this is really gaining momentum, and it's sort of created an atmosphere where there can be all sorts of statements made and hateful actions taken that used to be socially unacceptable that now are given sanction, and it's causing harm with the LGBTQI community. It is causing harm with minorities and immigrants. And so we need to understand that this is not normal, and we should not normalize it. This is a really frightening time when you have a Kentucky elected representative that calls the LGBTQI community a disease. That's really troubling language. And I guess I'll just close with just a couple of other thoughts. I've really gained a lot of perspective by reading Tim Snyder's book on tyranny. Tim Snyder is a Yale historian who studied these sort of regime changes over time. And he has 20 lessons on how we should respond to some of the things we're experiencing now. And I think 5 of them really relate to what educators are experiencing right now. The first one is do not obey in advance. One of the ways that these policies try to operate is they create fear, and they cause people to self-censor. And so if you are removing curricular material that 18 months ago was completely fine, if you're taking down or not going to do a certain play because you're afraid of how someone's going to react to it, you're obeying in advance. And so that's, I think, the first lesson is do not obey in advance. The second is defend institutions. We see these regimes try to take over an institution and warp it and then use it to advance their ideological agenda. You can look at some other states where that has happened, and you can see into Kentucky's future if that happens at the Kentucky Department of Education. I know KDE sometimes as a bureaucratic entity is hard to love, but we really do have something to risk here. If our institution gets turned into something weaponized against educators and against education. Third, remember your professional ethics. Educators are being asked to do things or ignore certain situations with students that may put them at risk. And I tell people, talk to an attorney or someone in an association who represents you. When you talk to someone from your district, they may be good people, but they may not also be looking out for your interests. And you need to make sure that you're working with your associations or your own attorney to get advice if you're asked to do something that goes against your professional ethics. Fourth, stand out and stand up. And Willie's done a great job modeling this. We've got to make the people that are pushing these kinds of policies uncomfortable. And we've got to show up in person and be seen, or we all will stand to lose a great deal. And finally, we all need to be as courageous as we can. This is scary, and a lot of people will be sort of cowed into inaction. Because they're afraid to stand up, afraid of what might happen to them. Those are real fears. So everybody's got to do that calculation of what the courage really, what being courageous really means to them. But that's something that I think we need to all check ourselves against, is how courageous can I be in the face of what's happening?
Those are some fantastic pointers, and thank you for sharing those with us. Yeah. And yeah, I think your call to action, your warning, kind of what you've seen by being kind of pulled in the middle of this is super instructive. And I just want to say thanks for your courage. Obviously, you're listening to these five pointers, or the whole 20 list, the list of 20. But I do feel like you are a remarkable leader of such an entity. As you said, hard to love. It's hard to love, bureaucratic entities. But the reality is and this is a part of that whole like ongoing war on government, right? Like it's part of that narrative, like, oh, government, they're the problem. Like, no, government's us. Government's the things we create to like take care of ourselves and our communities. And yeah, sometimes they're out of touch, and sometimes the bureaucracy isn't awesome. But these are things that were developed so that we could take care of one another, right? And so like I think we forget that when we play into some of those stories or some of those narratives, or we're doing ourselves a disservice. And we're absolutely doing it to service of folks like you, public servants who are really there for the right reason, who are trying to make sure our kids get what they need. So yeah, thanks again, Dr. Glass. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Mm-hmm.
So glad that Willie could get you on the show to chat with us, and I hope you aren't regretting it.
Hey, Aaron, I appreciate it so much, and I will try to do anything Willie ever asked me. So he's been a great friend. And
you should not have said that. It's documented. This is not going to go well for you, sir. I just
admire him tremendously. And thank you, Kimberly, for having me on too. I really enjoyed this and appreciate all three of you.
Thank you.
I do want to tell Dr. Glass one thing, if I may. Too woke for the okie doke means this.
Okay, I'm ready.
When you are as knowledgeable as you are, as I feel that us are, right? They can't just feed us anything as they are trying to do the masses. We understand what's happening here. And a lot of people, they are normalizing it because they're going about their everyday lives, wondering how they're going to eat, pay their mortgage with inflation. But we really all have to get on the same page of music. So when you hear, or you can start saying, we are too woke for the okie doke. And that goes towards the Republicans that are trying to diminish and demolish the minds of our young people.
Thank you very much, Kimberly. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Willie. It's been a delight being on with all three of you.
Thank you so much. I think we all need shirts now, too woke for the okie doke. I love it. That leads us to our call to action tonight. You just heard from Anna Whites, who is intelligent and thoughtful. You just heard from Commissioner Glass, who is clearly, for anyone who's seeing it for the first time, a caring, heartfelt, hardworking defender of public institutions. This is the Kentucky that we want. We don't want Josh Callaway's screaming that other human beings are disease. We can do better. We can all do better. Whether you're listening and you're a Democrat or you're a Republican who's in the room with a Democrat who's listening to us, we all want and deserve a better Kentucky. So we need you to help ensure that we get 4 more years of compassionate Commonwealth. Give us your views. Work with us so that we can expand support for Andy Beshear and our great slate of statewide candidates by filling out our little link. I actually did it during the show because Aaron was shaming me last time, and it took exactly 4 minutes. But in those 4 minutes, I was able to let them know what mattered to me as a Kentuckian so that they could and I could help advocate for what matters.
Amen.
All right. So I think that's our show. So really exciting. Thanks everybody. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Dr. Glass. Thank you, Willie. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Nate. Kimberly, can you close us out?
I sure will. It's been a great show tonight. Wow. It's all I can say. I'm in awe of Commissioner Glass. I really am. He's my type of people. Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State and organized as a 501c4. We are affiliated with the Indivisible Project, the Commonwealth Alliance Voter Engagement, otherwise known as CAVE, and we are also proud members of the Forward Kentucky Network. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. Make sure to join us next week when we'll be joined by a great guest. We think probably will be Representative Daniel Grossberg, my buddy, the Louisville Democratic representative. Production of episode 120 tonight was by our very own Nate Orshan. Thanks for juggling it all, Nate, like you always do. And we thank you, Nate, for the theme song. You can find more information and music, everybody repeat with me, at natosongs.com. That's Nato songs.com. And if you miss our weekly live stream on Facebook or YouTube, audio podcast and our show notes are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and practically wherever you get your podcast. If you do listen to the pod, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you are listening right now. logo, and some graphic content provided by Couchfire Media. More information can be found about them at couchfiremedia.com. So today is hump day. You've made it. I'm so proud of you. I really, really am. So the next thing is do something nice for somebody this week. Not only will they feel good, it will make you feel great. And join us next week at the same bat channel, same bat time. And we appreciate you viewing us tonight. So until then, have a good rest of the week.